All right, everybody. Welcome to the Super Lunch Bros podcast, where we face technical issues for 45 minutes before we set up.
No kidding.
Yeah, so we got some fights coming on. Oh, before we start again, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not watching this on YouTube and you listen on Spotify or Podbean or wherever you get your podcast, there's a video of this, so you get to see that too. And leave some comments below. Let us know what you would like us to talk about other than MMA. Any suggestion would be great. It's not that we're running dry on topics. We've just had so many fights, so we get easily distracted by that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So,
speaking of,
today we have some fights. We can just go we can go down the line. We got Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. And this one means a lot for the lightweight division. A little bit of setup. So the lightweight division is a little locked right now because we have Justin Gaethje with the interim belt. Of course, Khabib Nurmagomedov is the champion. They are set to fight. They are not set to fight. There is no date. But we do know that is the next fight that's going to happen, most likely, barring some weird Conor McGregor stuff. And we are looking at, we have Tony Ferguson, who just lost to Gaethje, and Dustin Poirier is sitting at number 3. Dan Hooker is at number 5. So this is essentially for the number 2 contender spot. I fully expect the winner of this could jump ahead of Tony Ferguson, and then, or maybe even face Tony Ferguson. Yeah. I would really enjoy that fight.
Yeah, if Tony's not going to fight Conor in the next year, then whoever wins this fight, I'd want to see fight Tony.
Yeah, I'm interested because Dustin Poirier obviously had his shot at Khabib. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it wasn't competitive. I was about to say that, but there were moments where Dustin Poirier, he put Khabib in danger. He had him in 2 guillotine chokes. They weren't just survival guillotines where people automatically throw them up when they're about to be taken down. But with Khabib, it's going to be that regardless. If you don't get that guillotine, you're going to your butt. But in this case, Poirier did it twice, and Khabib went belly up both times to escape that choke. You don't go belly up, especially as a dominant top-heavy wrestler. You do not go belly up when you feel like you're comfortable and in a good position. So those chokes were very tight. It just didn't work out for him. Poirier just didn't have it. Whatever it was, maybe it was just that night. Maybe it was just Khabib's always going to beat him. So that's a problem. Dan Hooker has not had a shot at any of these guys yet. This is his first top 5 fight. He just fought Felder and eked out a very close decision. And honestly, with the momentum and the styles, I haven't seen Poirier fight since he fought Khabib. To me, I think Hooker's got a lot going for him right now and a lot of tools to win this fight. He does take shots. He does get hit, and if Poirier connects on him, his chin could be tested. But Hooker's tough as shit, so I don't think he's going away. So I think over 5 rounds, that favors Hooker.
There's been some amazing lightweight fights recently.
Yeah, dude,
it's the
best division.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I picked against Hooker on the Felder fight.
So did I.
Yeah.
So I actually had Felder winning that decision. I went back and watched that fight again. I still gave Felder 3 rounds. They were close, and I rewatched it. If you give Hooker 3 rounds in that fight, totally understandable. Nobody was robbed. It was very close, but I still feel that Felder won. That being said, for the future of the division going forward over the next 5 years, I think Hooker winning that fight was more important for 155.
I agree.
So I think it would have been great for Felder in the short term, and I think in the short term it would have lined up some really cool fights. But the problem with Felder winning is he's a little bit older. He's not necessarily on his way out, but he's on the tail end of his prime and his career.
I don't
And
necessarily seeing him hanging with the next level above him.
it's not even just that. It's like,
Yeah.
who's he gonna fight? Who's gonna fight him? We've got Khabib fighting Justin. He might have gotten a fight against Tony Ferguson. I'd still watch that. I think that'd be a fantastic fight.
It would be.
If the winner of this fight wants to sit out and wait, or wait for that McGregor, or hell, McGregor versus Paul Felder would be fun. I just think there's a good chance that this division is locked up until next year, or maybe December. We might see the title fight sometime in August, or September, and then maybe you get a quick turnaround in December. But my guess is this division is locked up until next year.
Could you see them stripping the belt?
No,
from Khabib.
Not unless he refuses to fight Gaethje, which I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to refuse that fight.
I'm just trying to think, like, from a logistics perspective of getting Khabib over here, and whatever ends up happening in the fall when you have a combination of COVID still around plus flu season coming in. I don't know. I don't necessarily know what the fall's going to bring.
I think they're going to just end up going to Abu Dhabi, whether it's Yas Island. It's probably going to be Yas Island. I don't think that fight's going to be at the Apex. I think getting Khabib into the United States is harder than getting him to go to Abu Dhabi, and I think Justin Gaethje's game to go anywhere. So
Abu Dhabi would just make him a citizen if they.
Yeah, if they had.
If he's not already.
Yes. So that's why, like, the 155 division, historically, we've been over this 1,000 times. It's the strongest in every organization. It's the strongest division historically in the UFC. And it also, that being said, it also means we don't get to see a lot of the big fights that we want to see, because you might have this rising star who just, the stars don't like, or the timelines don't match up, and we don't get to see that super fight, or we don't get to see some of those matchups because they take a loss and it takes them a couple years to get back on track, and by that time, it's over. I mean, look at Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. We might never get that fight, and they've tried to make it for the past 4 or 5 years now. So
I have a feeling we're never going to get that fight.
With Khabib talking the way he is, yeah, I would say we're probably not going to get that fight. And that's
also part of why I was starting to think about either a title strip or a title vacate from Khabib's sense. If the UFC is pushing him to fight before he feels he's ready, I could see a situation where, given everything going on, he might vacate or hang it up.
Yeah, he's tried to strong arm the UFC already a little bit and saying, like, I'm not fighting Conor. He's like, I'm not fighting Conor again unless he gets, like, 2 more wins or whatever.
In which case, if Khabib didn't come to an agreement for the Justin Gaethje fight sometime this fall, and you had a strip, could you see Conor and Justin on Fight Island?
Yeah, that would probably be the way they would go, because then
honestly, the UFC might want that more.
Because that way Conor, has an easier path to victory. I don't necessarily think he gets that win, but he has an easier path to victory. Like, the stylistic matchup favors him much more than when he fights Khabib.
And it also favors pay-per-view numbers much more.
Well, of course, that goes without saying. Like, they want Conor. If they could have Conor fight a tree, they would. They'd be like, oh, this tree weighed in at 156, but it's not a title fight, so we're still good. We're going to go ahead and put that stump in there. Oh, man, Conor's doing a lot of damage to the tree, but the tree keeps taking it. Ooh, 2 more rounds of this. Let's see how it goes. Like, it would sell, man. It's Conor versus a warm body, Yeah.
But I will say, Conor versus Justin, and I think Justin is coming out of this whole pandemic UFC environment probably on a higher note than anyone else, kind of setting the stage, getting a big win on a big night. Like, I think this, if you were going to do it, this is a prime Conor versus Justin.
I think, depending on how this fight goes, I think Justin Gaethje is the best fighter in the 155 division. I think he is a nightmare for everybody in that division, including Khabib. Depending on how this fight goes. Khabib could just, ragdoll him and eventually get what he wants and, get a decision victory over 5 rounds or submit him later when Justin gets tired. And then if that happens, then we see like Khabib is the guy and he never fought. I've said this before. I think Donald Cerrone is a worse matchup for Khabib than a lot of the other top contenders at 155 just because of his skill set and the way he throws up submissions from his back and his willingness to just go out there. So I think Khabib in his title run got he's a bad matchup for a lot of people, which makes him,
he's gotten some very favorable matchups.
Yes, very much so. He did not have the strongest run.
And some very well-placed time off where he didn't have to face certain people.
Yeah, he, as a champion, I don't think Khabib has shown us much. I don't think he's the best lightweight of all time, and that's not a detriment to his skill set. I think it's just he hasn't done enough to show us. Like, if he fought 3 times a year or even 2 times a year for the past 3 years and won every single one of those fights against top-tier opponents and done it in dominant fashion, which he kind of has, but the opponents, everybody going in, I don't think a single one of them was favored over Khabib. I think every one of them was like, oh, well, he's just going to end up taking him down. Yeah. Never once. The only opponent that anybody had a question about was Ferguson, and he never had to fight him. So, or let's say like Gregor Gillespie, right? Or, Al Iaquinta when he fought him, or even Kevin Lee when he's on. Fight. Yeah, well, it wasn't close. It was not close.
It was a good fight.
It was silly is what it was. Like, there's a lot of guys in the 155 division who could give Khabib fits, but the problem is, like I said before, that the road to the title in 155 does not necessarily prepare you for the title fight, because a lot of these guys' skill sets vary so much, and many of them are just extremely well-rounded fighters, and you're preparing for that all, for years. And even if you can put together an insane amount of wins, you're going to end up going against one of the, strongest specialists in the UFC who's still successful. That would be like, it's like this. It would be like if Damian Maia was the champion, right? Back in the day, or even, a little bit in his current state, but let's say he's not as diminished as he is, right? Let's say he's the champ and you spend years fighting everybody, fighting strikers, fighting wrestlers, and fighting all these people. Nobody prepares you for Damian Maia. Like that, nothing prepares you for Damian Maia because he's got good wrestling, but really he's just going out there to submit you, and he's going to spam submission attempts until he gets it. And he's gotten decision wins that way. He's gotten a ton of finishes that way. And does that make him the best ever? It's hard to say because this is why I put GSP at the top. It's because the caliber of the opponents that he faced, the frequency at which he faced them, coming back from adversity,
the dominant way that he just picked people apart,
generations of fighters. He took out, the tail end of, I don't know where you would put Matt Hughes. He's not the.
It's like the old guard.
But he's slightly after. Like Matt Hughes was, okay. Let's say he's the old guard.
I would say the old guard of the modern UFC, because there's
yes,
UFC when it was born, where it was like, what the fuck am I watching? And then there was kind of where, all right, now we have rules, we have things in place. Like I would call him in that era of like when the UFC started to come into being. So he's kind of that old guard. Yeah.
Yeah, it was slightly after when they would just get Greg and Tim to go fight. And be like, hey, Greg hits pretty hard, and he gets in a lot of bar fights. So it was slightly after that. Matt Hughes was a true martial artist when he came in, a dominant wrestler with great submissions. He could crack a little bit, but that wasn't his path to victory. He was lifting people up and throwing them around, and he was clearly, a couple steps ahead and a level above everybody. And, I mean, George St. Pierre, the first time he faced him, GSP was not prepared for that.
Yep.
And, he took him out. And then GSP works his way back up and dethrones the king. GSP's on top forever, and he has that fluke loss against Matt Serra. And He fails. I talked about this earlier this week, about Dana's reaction to Curtis Blades' win, and the way that people quit, like when oh, man, now I don't remember his name. It starts with an R. The guy who quit on the stool.
I don't know.
He
Rosish or something.
Yeah, I forget now. But he like I said it earlier this week. Like, we've seen people quit. People quit all the time. Do they quit and then give themselves up to a submission? Do they, go down to strikes that, weren't necessarily fight-ending strikes? They just didn't want to be in there anymore.
We're also hearing more than we ever have.
Yeah,
I would
we get
say,
to
like,
hear
in
everything
terms of,
in there.
Yeah, hearing them talk to their coaches, hearing stuff back and forth. It's a Max Roshkov. That was the dude?
Roshkov. Roshkov is what it is.
That's
yes.
it.
It's spelled weird. Yes.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that the Blades Volkov fight. Say what you want about it. I would be highlighting the absolute insane records that were broken in that fight.
14 takedowns in that fight at heavyweight,
which put him over 52 takedowns in heavyweight, which is the most ever in the division.
Yes.
For any fighter. Like, it's mixed martial arts. It's not fucking try and knock someone out and keep it standing up.
Isn't
the
boxing.
point of it is, the point of it is that you have well-rounded fighters, different types of fighters in there. So if you can't find a way to celebrate and hype up the excitement of someone that can just ragdoll and take someone down at will, like, I don't know. I think that's not a good way for the organization to approach it.
Dana's mad because Curtis mentioned stuff about money. He said, like, we're not paid enough. Like, they should get rid of sponsors and or they should allow us to bring our own sponsors in and stuff. So he was mad at him, and that's why he said what he said. I don't want to harp on it like too much again, but I think Curtis Blades, if you're going to blame somebody in that fight, you blame Volkov. Like, why the hell are you blaming the guy who was putting out offense the entire time and out wrestling? Even when he was, and people are talking shit about him being exhausted and calling him Dada 5000. Like, no, screw you, dude. Like,
do you have any idea the output that he just put into that fight for 5 rounds?
It's not just the output. It's even it's the output, but it also, look at the end when he was completely exhausted and people are giving him shit. He still got takedowns. He still imposed his will and did what he wanted to do against a guy who didn't want that to happen. Guess what?
A heavyweight fighter broke the record for most takedowns in UFC history and continued to do that all the way into the 5th round. It wasn't like he was just hugging him against the cage the 5th round. He was still taking him down, actively pursuing. Like, that's hard. That's hard in any division to do. To get 14 takedowns in a fight, let alone do that in heavyweight. Like, that's.
So we're about, like, we were talking about Khabib. That's Khabib's game plan. Khabib's game plan is to take you down. Never once have you seen Khabib stand in there and want to trade with you. He just wants to take you down. And it's celebrated by everybody who.
And if he tried, his dad would, beat the shit out of him. So.
Yeah, he would yell at him, like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. So Dustin Poirier, I think this is a very tough fight for him. I think early on, and it's not that Dustin has bad cardio. I think his cardio is good, but I think as this fight goes longer, Hooker with that camp, the city kickboxing camp, I think they're so good at game planning and making adjustments. And every one of those fighters has such a high fight IQ that you really need to give them different looks. And I think Dustin is not, he's not as varied a fighter that's going to give someone fits who's very good at picking up on tendencies. So they're going to be able to pick up on Poirier's tendencies pretty early on. That being said, if Poirier catches you and you go limp and then he lands a couple shots, the fight's over. So that could happen too. It's just, as the fight goes on, I think Hooker can do enough. Unless Poirier decides to kick his legs off and do the Edson Barboza, because Edson was able to really damage Hooker. And, like, honestly, I think we've seen the path to victory to beat Hooker, and it's not by standing and trading with him and doing what he wants to do. It's take him out of his game plan. So you have to do something that's not necessarily unexpected, but you're going to have to mess up what he wants to do.
I'm a huge Dustin Poirier fan.
Me too.
I don't know where his head's at. I don't know how he's mentally recovered from the Khabib fight and that shot. And that's the biggest question mark for me. I know he's tough as shit. I know he has a high fight IQ. I know he can look at Dan Hooker and put together a plan to kick his legs off. And I know he's capable of executing it, but I don't know mentally where he's at or if he can translate it. So that's my biggest question mark going into the fight. I think it's going to be an awesome fight, but for me, I know what Dan Hooker's going to do going in there. I don't know what Dustin Poirier is going to show up.
I'm leaning towards Hooker. This one's really close. I know a lot of people are just picking Poirier just because they think he's a bigger fighter and he's going to go out there and knock him out or do whatever he wants out there. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a closer fight than that. I mean, he could just shut everybody up and just be like, I just knocked him out. Everybody shut up and leave me alone. I'm going back for that title.
Absolutely. So I'm also picking Hooker, but I would be happy to see Dustin win, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Welterweight, Mike Perry.
This is an interesting one.
So Mickey Gall has had a weird UFC career just because, he was a part of that whole circus with CM Punk. And then
Sage Northcutt.
Well, yeah, he beat Sage Northcutt.
Yeah.
Like, he's a good fighter with really good grappling, okay striking. It's gotten better every fight, but Mike Perry, who know what his girlfriend is the only one who's in his corner this fight, so I'm excited. I hope this goes to a second round so I could hear the corner advice. I just want to hear her talking to him, being like apparently she knows a little bit of what she's doing. I mean, she knows enough to do what he needs, apparently, and that's what he said. And far be it from me to tell a fighter what he thinks he needs in a corner. And Mike Perry's goddamn crazy. So he's going to come out and try to blast Gall. Gall is very hittable. I actually think Perry, has a very seeable path to victory here, and that's, I think he can put it on Gall and knock him out.
Yeah, it should be a fun fight.
Gian Vellante came in looking like a sack of potatoes. I'm not interested in this fight at all.
Yeah.
He's never been one of those guys that I thought was great or even good. I think he has some power, but at heavyweight that's diminished. I actually have no idea. Like I said, he looks like a sack of potatoes. I don't know what he was doing to train for this fight, but obviously it wasn't cardio or eating well. Brendan Allen's really good. I don't know Kyle Daukaus very much.
I also thought it was Dukakis in my head.
Yeah. Philip Linz at heavyweight. Oh, that's the guy who just fought Arlovsky, I think, and lost the decision. He's pretty
Sarah
damn good.
McMahon Aspen Ladd fight was canceled.
Yep.
That's a shame.
Sean
I was looking forward to seeing.
On the prelims, there's Jordan Griffin's pretty exciting, so that might be fun early on. But the big fight for me is Luis Pena versus Kama Worthy. So Luis Pena is Violent Bob Ross. I love that dude. I love that dude.
So secretly Bob Ross.
Yes, it's just Bob Ross, and he's de-aged and decided to do MMA instead of painting this time. Yeah, I'm always excited to see him fight. He's a very cool guy. I like seeing him. Yeah, it's pretty much all for this card. There's some other stuff with the UFC this week. So we have multiple fighters coming out talking about pay. Back to Curtis Blades, in another interview, he had a couple suggestions. And do you know what his foremost suggestion was for fighter pay? Getting rid of Reebok.
I wonder where that suggestion is coming from.
Everyone. So he he brought that up, and he's like, just let us get our own sponsors. And he even referenced that exact same thing. That I think he's specifically referencing Brendan Schaub when he said like some fighters were making six figures. There's some fighters were making 100K for every fight, and that was a specific example brought up during this whole debacle when they signed Reebok, with Brendan Schaub versus Dana White, where Brendan Schaub said, I'm making 100K per fight, and Dana White's like, no, you're not. This guy's barely making 15, or he's barely making he's like, I don't even know these brands. And then Brendan,
it turns out he was making like 160. So
yeah. Brendan like showed his tax returns. He was like, this is how much I was making per fight. And kind of Dana White had to eat crow on that one. So there is some Jorge Masvidal doesn't want to fight. He turned down the fight versus Usman multiple times. The initial time he said they weren't offering him enough money, and the second time apparently they offered him the same amount of money as they were gonna that he got for the BMF fight against Nate Diaz. So let's unpack that just a little bit. That means for a title fight, for the world title fight at welterweight, they were going to offer him less money than when he fought Nate Diaz. Problem.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go on a little rant. I think one of the number one, I hate a lot of things about how the UFC pay structure is. One of the number one things I hate the most is they took care of him behind closed doors. Like that kind of, I don't know, just that saying, that like mantra that just gets thrown around, especially for certain fighters, when it's like, oh, he got paid this much for this fight. And then there's kind of that, oh, but like, behind closed doors, he got more. I think that is fucking misleading and ridiculous. And it should be absolutely clear in the open, like any other sport, exactly how much fighters are getting paid for themselves, and it's for everyone else to see. Like none of that behind closed doors complete crap that just gets thrown around. And I also think, like, I don't know, how do you want your organization to be viewed? Do you want it to be viewed as these are professional fighters, like this is what they're doing, or is this just what firefighters and like blue collar people are doing on the side, or accountants are doing on the side? Like we can go back to that if that's what Dana White wants. He's like, no, I don't want to pay people. I just want people, to do their 9-to-5 job and then come in and fight on the side.
That's what he said. He said it's not a career, it's an opportunity. He just said that.
I think that's a logical fallacy, or maybe it's more of a red herring. I don't know how I'd frame that in terms of, I don't know how I'd exactly frame it, but it's dumb. It sounds catchy in a soundbite, but when you start to break it down and think about it, cool. The NFL is also an opportunity, not a career. If you really want to frame it that way, like, what do you define a career as? Any sport where the average length of time that you do it is less than 5 years, it's probably not necessarily a career. But if you're part of that sport, the expectation is that you're making serious money. The expectation is that you're making professional athlete money. The idea of being a professional athlete is supposed to be, I am at this, incredibly high level. Like when we think of professional athletes, we think of well-paid people putting themselves through incredible rigors. So if you want UFC fighters to be viewed as professional athletes the same way other organizations' professional athletes are viewed, you have to put them in the same plane of being financially compensated. Because the UFC benefits from that too. If people see UFC fighters walking around, I think Conor McGregor set an amazing example, walking around in nice tailored suits, nice cars. If this is kind of the face of, like, if you're going to put the UFC out there and you have UFC fighters looking like they're being well taken care of across the board, you're going to attract more athletes. You're going to attract a better competition. You're going to get a better product. I think
but then their
for some reason
margin goes down.
Maybe for a short term, but how, like,
their overall profits might go up, but they're going to have to take a hit in the short term. And
if you want to get to the profit margin, if you want to get to the profit margins and the capital worth of other professional athlete organizations, I think you got to take some risks. And that also means that sometimes you got to pay people more.
So we've talked about this a lot, and like it just keeps getting brought back up. I don't have sympathy for Jorge Masvidal as much. One, because I've said this before, he's not my cup of tea. I appreciate him as a person, and of course, I think he deserves more money. We've said this 1,000 times, but I always have to preemptively say it so that way, if anybody hears this, they're like, he doesn't want people to get paid more. Nope, of course I do. That's stupid. Everybody in the UFC deserves to get paid more because they're worth more. But Jorge Masvidal signed an 8-fight deal before all this mess started. And I don't know the inner workings. I don't know how he worked it with his manager. I don't know how he worked it with representation and sponsorship and anything else. But did he even test the market? Did he see what Bellator was going to offer him? Did he think about going to the PFL and making $1 million to win? Did he not want to take that? Because that's a risk. They still get paid every fight. But if you believe in your skills that much and you think you're the best in the world and you're going to win that
close to it. If you're that close to a title run, why are you signing an 8-fight deal?
Well, but this is before he fought. I think I forget when he signed.
Was it before Askren?
It might have been before that, before he blew up.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying is if he believed this much in himself always, then I think just from an outsider's perspective, why wouldn't you have taken that opportunity to go somewhere else or at least shop around? Maybe he did and he wasn't getting any offers. I find that hard to believe. Everybody who's left to go to Bellator seems very happy. They seem like they're very well taken care of. They have the opportunity to use sponsorships at their leisure. And like I said, the PFL is always there. It's not everybody talks down about it as far as skill level goes. Well, that should be more incentive for you to go because it's a guaranteed $1 million check when you win. You have what, like a season, which is like 4 or 5 fights, and then the playoffs, which is I think 3 fights or something like that. Like, it's not that many fights. It might not even be that many, but the point is, you get paid for all those fights anyway, and you can have sponsorships in the meantime. You're going to be, if you believe that you are this draw and you deserve this money, like you should believe in the fact that you are, a market to yourself, and you're going to bring a market with you no matter where you go, and you have a big enough voice, and you're going to bring eyes to the PFL, which means they're going to increase their sponsorship. So everybody over there is going to do well, but you're also going to do well. And then if you really think that it's below you, like the skill levels below you, but you have a guaranteed prize of $1 million at the end for something that you could consider easy, is it really just not worth it for you? Or there's a couple sides to this. One, he's being compensated more than the other people are offering him, and everything I just said is moot. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fine. That's a possibility. I don't know. That gets to your point of behind closed doors kinds of shit. The second thing is he was in a tough spot emotionally, physically in his career, and he realized that he didn't believe in himself. He talks about this stuff and he's like, I'm baptizing these fools and like I'm coming back, I'm street Jesus, like all that stuff, right? Like that's a cool persona and everybody's falling in love with it and that's awesome. And he's one of the OGs, guys who fought in Kimbo Slice's backyard fights, right? This guy's a fighter, for like a real fighter, and he has been his whole life. Maybe he was at a point in his, like I said, in his career, in his life, mentally, physically, all those things where he felt an 8-fight deal gave him security, and now then he was willing to sign it because he wasn't willing to take that gamble on himself. And now all of a sudden, when he did, he hits it big, right? And he gets this popularity. He beats Askren in a dominant fashion. He knocks out Till in the second round after getting dropped in the first round. Reverse that order. He beat Till first and then Askren. Then he gets his big spectacle with this weird fucking belt against Nate Diaz. And now he wants more money because he believes he's worth more, which again, he is. But that's part of the deal. When you sign a long contract, you're essentially saying it's the Scottie Pippen thing. Scottie Pippen signed that contract because he was injured and he didn't want to take a gamble. He had a lot of people he was taking care of. He has a big family, right? And he has he wanted the security. And it's not like it was an insignificant amount of money. He was making a lot of money. It just compared to his contemporaries and the other people at his skill level, he was making far less. Now, that's what I'm saying is like he didn't take the gamble on himself and he took the safer path. And in hindsight, we can look and say, oh, well, it didn't work out for him. Well, let's think about the other 100 NBA players who aren't or didn't become the biggest star in the NBA or the second biggest star in the NBA and took a 4-year contract for a couple $1,000,000, or like, you know, in 2016, I believe, was it 2016 or 2013? There was a big boost in the salary cap in the NBA, and it all got dumped in at once. And there was a lot of open spots, a lot of free money, and people were getting way overpaid. Omir Ashik was making $22 million a year. You might ask yourself, who's Omir Ashik? That's a good question because nobody knows. Anyway, the point is these people signed these contracts, and had they had the skill level of a LeBron James or a Stephen Curry or, you know, Conor McGregor, let's go back to MMA, or Khabib Nurmagomedov, these guys might only sign 1-fight deals or 2-fight deals, maybe even a 3-fight deal, because they realize, like, my potential is not, you're not going to lock me up for eight fights because I don't know where I'm going to be, but I guarantee you I'm going to be worth more money at the end of this contract. Let's take a step back now and look at Jorge Masvidal and not criticize his decision, right, of not wanting to make these fights, but let's analyze it fairly and say for what this situation and say it for what it is. He didn't want to gamble on himself. Okay, if he had, maybe that gamble pays off in this scenario. He's worth more money and he could have negotiated and got more money. But he didn't want to take that gamble. He took the safer route and he got paid to do that. And, you know, if you want to say he has to pay for it now or whatever, or it's still unfair, that's fine. But I'm telling you, let's analyze it fairly and not just be like, oh man, I can't believe he's not getting paid. Like, he's such a big star. He has a contract. Like, he just signed one.
I think it's one of those situations where both things can be true.
Of course. Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Both Jorge Masvidal did not necessarily make the best business decision. Or his manager, or he's got a shitty manager, shitty lawyer, whatever situation led to him taking that deal. Yeah, you know, a little bit of egg on his face. But that doesn't excuse the UFC from their business practice. That doesn't excuse the UFC from their structural problems. So I think I think it's one of those situations where it's probably easy to tear down, you know, John Jojen's perspective, Jorge Masvidal's, you know, trying to tear down, you know, it's easy because Dana White does that all the time. He tries to tear down individuals and make it counterproductive for people to come after him for money or come after the UFC for money.
Yeah, because
but at the end of the day, that
won't let you fight.
But at the end of the day, I don't think that excuses the UFC from their pay issue, from the fact that they're an organization that profits enormously off of their fighters.
Yes,
and their
80%.
Their fighters don't get fairly compensated. So I'm going to throw some ideas at you that I have been low key calculating the numbers on. So what's the current roster for the UFC?
500.
500. All right.
Let's 500. It's nice, easy.
Let's call it 500. I think there's probably some room to cut that roster down.
Yeah, I would say so. You could probably cut it down to 300.
So let's cut it down to 400. So we still leave some wiggle room. All right.
Okay.
And let's do a graduated salary system. Cool. Rookie contract. Outside of fights, you get a $50,000 a year salary on your rookie contract. So you still make money on fights, you know, however the Reebok reel works. But you're at least making $50,000 salary. So even if you're injured, even if you only fight once a year, you know, then maybe you're making 75 to 80,000 based on however many times you're fighting. Cool. Next level up. Signing your second contract at the UFC, maybe third. Now you're making kind of that baseline journeyman. $100,000 a year salary on top of whatever you're making on the fights. You can sparse that out and then create another couple levels of that to where, like, if you're someone in the top 10 for a division, cool. You can push that salary up to now they're making a straight salary of 200, 250,000 plus making money they're making in the fights. All of this is probably only going to cost the UFC all the way up through the ranks around $50 million a year to have all of their fighters making a legit and livable salary while still paying them relatively what they're paying them right now for their fights without having to increase fight pay, without having to start giving up huge percentages of the pay-per-view. If that's what the UFC is banking on, I think a graduated salary system is probably a great way to start, one, attracting more athletes to it, and two, easing some of the issues that people are having with how much they're getting paid or how much they're not getting paid.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't realize, I've never thought about the numbers before. That makes sense. And then on top of that,
so I think the last revenue that I think the last big year of revenue they released was something like 500 to 600 million in revenue for
it's still less than 10%. Yeah,
exactly. So it's
that's just for salaries, and then they would also have to pay them on top for the fights. And now it doesn't seem so bad when you give that guy $5K. That's an insignificant amount of money.
Yeah, it's basically, for one, you've got to fight to stay on the roster. So there's, obviously UFC can cut people left and right. Cool, your salary is gone if you're cut. So that's that incentive on the fighter side. If I want to keep getting the salary, as well as the bonuses from showing up to fights, bonuses for fighting, I can go out there, perform, and increase my freaking lifestyle, but at least I have a fallback.
Yeah, so, I mean, that makes sense because you could also say oh, you don't want to you offer a newer fighter a fight and they don't want to take it. That scenario actually takes negotiating power away from fighters. Because you'd be like, you're already getting paid. I told you you're fighting this guy. You say no, okay, bye.
Yeah. So it puts, like I said, it doesn't necessarily hurt the UFC. It still puts them in a very strong position for setting up fights, putting fights together, and threatening to cut someone. Now you have a serious, that's a bigger threat on their income than it was previously.
And I would say if you cut somebody and bring them back in, they would have to start over with their rookie contract again or something like that.
Maybe not necessarily rookie, but maybe lower level journeyman.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Because if you have a fighter who's making,
if you have a fighter in the top 10 and they're making 250,
yeah,
and they decide to go to Bellator, and they come back 2 years later, I want to come back to the UFC. Cool. Now you're getting the baseline journeyman level. You're going back to 100.
Well, I would say even if they refuse to fight, so you offer them fights, be like, hey, you're gonna fight this guy, and they say no, and maybe they get a little bit more leeway once they get up in the rankings. But if you keep offering and someone keeps ducking, like we've heard about Kobe Covington or when Tyron Woodley was ducking fights, and they felt oh, this guy doesn't deserve. This guy doesn't deserve to fight me, or Nate Diaz even. You can just be like, okay, bye, and when you come back, you don't get that contract, that same contract you have to renegotiate your contract. And then they could say hey, last time when you were in the top 10 or top 5, you didn't want to fight anybody. We're not going to just keep paying you $250K a year to not fight anyone. So you're going to, is if you sign again, we're only giving you 100 or 50, whatever it might be. It's if you, especially if it's
and you're still given the opportunity in that contract to work their way back up. All right, cool.
Yeah.
We offer you 4 fights over the next 2 years, and you take all 4 of those fights and, perform to a certain level, boom, you can push yourself back into that 250 bracket.
Yeah, so the only issue I have with this is when do you become a higher tiered fighter? And the easy answer is go by rankings, but the problem with the rankings is they're not standardized. There's no algorithm. There's no algorithm. Everybody gives the BCS crap, for calculating who's the best team and all that other stuff. But I think they really nailed it in the last 5 years now, 4 years, where maybe it's 5 years, where they've been doing the bowl series or the playoffs with the bulls. So you use the algorithm to help you because, let's be honest, how are you going to decide who's better? A 13-0 team who hasn't faced a really significant challenge, or a 10-2 team that plays in the SEC? It's very difficult to parse that out Because what if every win of that SEC team won by only 2 points, and then every win that 13-0 team got from, who knows, the WAC or whatever, they win every game by 25 points.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to weigh that, and humans can do that, but we have algorithms that can calculate those things based off of strength of schedule, and you can go 3, 4, 5, 6 teams deep into that. Like, who did they face? Who did they face? Who did they face? Who did this team face? So if we do that with the UFC, and you come up with an algorithm to calculate, hey, who has the most points, right? Who has the most points based off of our algorithm, and that'll give you a baseline to go off of, and then you can use logic on top of that. Whereas now there's
I submit to you an idea. We don't need to use rankings at all. For the salary purposes only, you go purely off a graduated scale that takes into account how many fights you've had in the UFC and how many years you've been in the UFC. And purely that. And there's a cap at some point. So let's put the notional cap at 250,000.
Well, then Donald Cerrone's making more money than people ranked in the top 2.
Well, let's say after you've been in the UFC for, let's call it 6 years or 10 fights, whichever you reach first, or let's call it, because getting 10 fights in the UFC,
that's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, that's difficult. So once you get everything past there, your salary is $250,000 a year. Now, the incentive to want to get higher in the rankings is, cool, once you're getting on main cards and once you're headlining cards, you're still getting pay-per-view percentages.
Paid more money.
You're getting paid more for fights. So that's the incentive to, and obviously you want to be a champ. Every person in the UFC wants to be champion at some point. So you're not taking away that incentive by putting in a salary cap and taking away rankings, and not taking away, but not factoring in rankings for the baseline salary fighter pay. But I think that does a good job of it just takes that whole element out of there. Rankings are going to factor into who gets title shots, who headlines cards, that kind of thing, different types of draws. But when it comes to pure the fighter salary system, take rankings out and just do it purely off of how many fights you've had in the UFC or how many years you've been in the UFC.
Just off the top of my head, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that just because you're in the UFC longer, you make more money. Not that I think that's a bad thing. Of course, the more fights you have, we saw.
You can be in the UFC 5 years, and you can take someone that's been in 15 years, or maybe not 15. Let's say someone that's been in 5 years versus someone that's been in 8 years. If that person that's been in only 5 years, like Israel Alessandre, makes a fucking run to the champ, and now, cool, they're champ, they're making pay-per-view money, they're making percentage, you can make way more than someone that's just been a journeyman for 5 to 8 years in the UFC. So it doesn't necessarily
yeah, I guess.
Put that, yeah. So it depends on the person, but at least gives the people that aren't going to be champ an opportunity to still make that a form of life-changing money.
I'd still like to see an algorithm, because let's talk about the ranking system, because we had news come out recently about the rankings as well. Did you see that? So the UFC is giving, there's a let's call it Cliff Notes. There's for the people who are on the board, the people who vote for the rankings, there's a Cliff Notes thing of hey, this is, who they beat, and this is who they this is who they beat, this is who they beat, and this is their strength, their weaknesses, and this is how they beat them, and that kind of stuff. I think that's fine, but I think the reason why the rankings are so fucked and how they have been so jacked for so long, one is there's no consistency. A win over, I knock out the number one guy in 2 minutes. If I do that right now, what ranking should I be?
I mean, you would say number one. If you knock out the number one guy.
Okay, no, yeah. I'm not. I actually don't need a definite answer, but I was just waiting for you to give me one. Fine. Yeah. So now, given that, if that scenario happens again, or something similar to that scenario happens again, that guy's the number one contender every time. Barring some crazy stuff, but that should be the baseline. The reason why it's been so jacked is the UFC's been giving suggestions and saying if they get a win, they shouldn't go up more than one spot, and if they get a loss, they shouldn't go down more than two. That's stupid. And now, and given just the information that we got, I would say that that's
so if
not
you're ranked 15,
what's actually going on.
So if you're ranked 15 and you somehow get matched up against a ranked 5 UFC fighter and you just starch them, you're still outside the top 10.
Not necessarily, but that's what I'm saying is what's happened. Like what I just said was kind of like a guideline. They don't want people just throwing everybody around. Well, so here's the problem with that. This is the information we've been given. And the thing that we've suspected for many years now is that the UFC behind closed doors has been like, hey, you know, we want this guy promoted because we need him to fight this guy, so we want these rankings. I don't like the ranking system. I think the rankings are dumb. I understand why they're there. They're for casual fans, and that's where the UFC makes their money. Because if you're a hardcore fan or even, you know, someone who's just into MMA in general and has been watching the UFC for, you know, 5, 6, 7 years, and you have a good understanding of the sport and especially the organization, you kind of know who's like the next guy, and they're going to promote guys the same way they would promote them now. It's just when they do the ranking system, now all of a sudden, like everything's just bared up in front of you, like how fucked up it is, where like this guy who's ranked 15, but everybody's fallen in love with him. And it's like the UFC keeps pushing him and pushing him. Now all of a sudden he's fighting the number 2 guy. Why? Just if they got rid of the ranking system, I would actually be okay with that, just because it would show you just like, hey, this guy's more popular. We're going to put him against a guy who's popular or someone we want to see him against. I really don't care about these rankings. Fighters wouldn't be able to hide behind the rankings. You know, they wouldn't be like, you know, I'm number 2. I'm not fighting a number 10. This is stupid. I'm not going down. It's like sometimes I agree with that fighter, but that same argument could be made when, you know, there's no rankings involved. Like this guy is like, dude, I'm on a 5-fight win streak. I'm going to fight this guy who has 1 win in the UFC. Like, no thanks. That's the same argument, right? The same argument can be made, but with different information. And instead of just saying like, I'm number 2, I'm not fighting number 10. I would be okay with the rankings going away completely. I think they're kind of crap. And we've been over this before. The number 1, so the champion doesn't have a ranking, right? So the numbering gives you the challenger, right? That's what that's for. It is not for who's the best in the division. It's who's the best, who should be up next for the challenger, or who should be the next challenger. The problem is, like, I've had these rankings up the whole time, but like, let's look at Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champ. He's the champion. Cool beans. The number 1 contender, Robert Whittaker. Does that mean he should be next for the title fight? No, it's not a good system when the guy who loses the title just immediately drops to 1. Then, so are you ranking? This is not a contender ranking then. Now you're ranking who you think is best in the division. Also a valid ranking system. That's fine. But
what
you can't.
I got an idea, because I think you're right. It is extremely flawed. So what if we took away the numbers and instead made a tiered system?
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. So if you had just make the top 5 fighters in a division a tier. So cool, that's tier 1. So if you're in the tier 1, any one of those fighters are pretty much in the running to get a title shot. Cool.
Yeah, I would call them the immediate contenders. Contenders.
Any one of those top 5 can be immediate contenders. And then, next tier, 5 to 10. Next tier, you can do, you can even do 10 to 20 as its own tier.
Yeah, because essentially that's the same thing.
Yeah, tier 3, 10 to 20. Tier 2,
and then everybody
5
else.
To 9. Yeah,
I would be okay with a tiered system because it gets away this stupid numbering system where you end up with guys with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, what does that mean to you? It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's
cool. And it even sounds better. I'm a top tier fighter. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm in a tier 1.
And I'd be okay with that. And I think it would be easier, or not easier. It would be more justifiable for the UFC to throw people in and out of tiers based off of popularity and the past couple fights. Like, Yoel Romero constantly staying in the top 5 for that division. Okay, I mean that's fine, but you can't tell me that he's more deserving of another title shot than Darren Till.
Well, and also, if you look at his win-loss record for his past 5 fights,
not good.
I would push him out of the first tier. You've had quite a few title shots and chances.
So he lost to Whitaker. He beat. I'm trying to just doing off the top of my head.
Twice.
Well, hold on. He beat Luke Rockhold, I think, and then he lost to Whitaker again. Yeah. And then he lost to Paulo Costa, and then he lost to Israel Adesanya. So he's 4-1, or sorry, 1-4 in his last 5.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. You're scary, but you're not in the top tier anymore.
No. Yeah, you need to get at least another win before you can be in immediate title contendership, because you're not.
If your last fights were both losses, I don't think there's a justifiable reason why you're in tier 1. If you have 2 losses in a row.
And he's fighting Uriah Hall next, which I'm excited for. I'm excited for that fight. But 4 versus 10, is that really what it should be, or should be Yoel Romero should be probably like 8 or 9?
If I told you Yoel Romero and Uriah Hall were both in tier 2 and they're fighting to
that makes sense.
Move back up to tier 1. Cool.
That makes sense to me. All right, we solved all the problems again. Man, we're good at this.
I don't know why the UFC doesn't just hire us, because we're
good at fighter pay.
Yeah, we're going to save the UFC money. We're going to make the fighters happy. We're going to fix the ranking system.
I'll take a small salary too. I don't need much money.
Yeah, and even then, the UFC would now have more capability with a tiered system to push people up that they want to push up.
Yes.
So it not only makes sense, but it goes into their favor for how they want to run things anyway. Instead of being hogtied by someone being the number 1 or number 2 contender after they've and having to negotiate and talk to MMA media to work out. Take away all the weird backroom dealings for pay and rankings and all that, and just be straightforward and open with it. This is our tiered system. These are the basics for how we evaluate which fighters are in those tiers for fighting or in their tiers for their weight class. And then, also salaries.
Yeah, if you lose 3 fights in a row, you should not be in the immediate contendership tier.
Yeah. Well, it's just like we were talking about with Cody Garbrandt. Where he was in the rankings versus his record, he shouldn't have been in the top 5. He should have been bumped down to tier 2.
Yeah, he should have been tier 2, because there's no reason. You had your shot. You were the champion. You lose. Okay, you're still in the media contendership. They could give you a title at any time. I totally agree with that. Cool.
If you get a title shot and lose, maybe you just bump down to the bottom of tier 1. Cool. Now
you're still in tier 1. There's no bottom or top. Let's just say tier 1.
Yeah, cool. You're still in tier 1. Maybe you get a second shot at it, depending on how the fights are set up. Maybe you don't. But if you lose 2 in a row, you can't be in tier 1, even if one of those was a championship.
No, and then you lose a third one.
Yeah.
There's maybe a specific scenario where you could lose 3 fights based off of how shallow the division is and still be ranked up there. Maybe.
Heavyweight.
I'd say light heavyweight now. Heavyweight's bumping.
I'm going to eat that because I'm wrong. Heavyweight's awesome.
Yeah, heavyweight's been pretty badass lately. All right, man.
Once again,
anything else?
No, I think we've very effectively solved all of the UFC's problems in a single podcast.
Next week we'll conquer racism.
Let's not overpromise.
Let's not ruin everything.
Let's not overpromise.
All right, thanks everybody for listening. We'll put a show up post fight, analyze what happened, and probably preview the next fight after that. I actually might start splitting them up anyway. Even if we record them on the same day, I might split them up into 2, so they're not as long. I have heard complaints from our listener that some of them are a little bit long. So if we're just talking MMA, people kind of get burned out. So we can just we can still talk. We'll just split them up into two. So that might be coming. Hopefully get a new setup here. Maybe I'm thinking about setting up my camera here and getting a capture card so I can make my video look a little bit better.
I apparently have a lot of work to do on my end.
You need to get a working computer that doesn't explode when you start Skype.
Oh my god. Okay.
But yeah,
the computer I'm using right now was $99.
That's not a bad deal. It's working.
Yeah.
It works.
Well, except for the microphone.
Yeah, that's fine. So thank y'all for listening. Make sure if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Give us suggestions. Comment below. If you're just listening on Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts, like this is up on YouTube. So if you want to watch the video this time or next, it's up there as well, and vice versa for you guys watching this. Anything for you?
No, thank you very much. We appreciate your support, and yeah, anything we can do to improve, we're definitely game to.
All right, everybody. That's Nate. I'm Brendan, and we are out of here. Thank y'all.
Take care.